10. Attention, please. Rudy Miller stood outside the mess hall, shading his eyes from the early morning sun, watching the dock. Mr. Warden stepped onto the launch and settled himself down. The line was cast off, the engine roared into life, and the silver boat pulled away. A diabolical look, one he would never wear in public, spread itself over Rudy's normally expressionless features. He hefted the camp megaphone in his right hand, assumed his poker face, and entered the noisy mess hall. "Your attention, please," he spoke into the megaphone. "This is your camp director speaking. I would just like to remind everybody that this is Camp Algonquian Island. There will be no activities today. Repeat, no activities." A laughing cheer rose from the boys. Chip groaned and glared at Ralph Deacon, who winced visibly. "And now," Rudy continued pleasantly, "I would like to appoint Mike Webster head counselor."
"You've already got a head counselor,"
growled Frank.
"Yes, but he's been demoted," Rudy explained. "Now, if I may continue, all punishment is hereby revoked. One of the counselors will take out the garbage. Let's pick a number at random. Say 13.
"Miller, you stop that!"
shouted Chip, springing to his feet. Rudy stiffened.
"Never, since the days of our beloved founder, Elias Warden, has a counselor disobeyed the camp director. Shape up, or you don't eat."
Chip, Frank, and Ralph glared at Rudy. Everybody else laughed, some of the counselors so hard that their heads were practically in their breakfasts.
"Quiet, please. I'm not finished,"
Rudy announced.
"The no activities rule, of course, applies to campers only. I have noted that the counselors are in terrible physical condition. Accordingly, the counselors' relay races will begin shortly after breakfast. This will be followed by the counselors' obstacle course, the counselors' shot put, the counselors' swimming race, the counselors' discus throw, the counselors' 10-kilometer run, the counselors' soccer game, field hockey game, baseball game, high jump, and, if there's time, the counselors' lunch."
By now, the boys were in howling hysterics, but the counselors were no longer amused.
"Miller, shut up! This has gone on far enough."
"I'm not running 10 kilometers on Miller's say-so."
"He has no real authority."
"All right," announced Frank, rising to his feet. "That's enough. The game's over, Miller. You're not camp director anymore."
"This is mutiny," warned Rudy calmly.
"Shut up, Miller,"
said Chip furiously.
"Get over here and give me that megaphone." "And about time, too," sneered Harold Green.
Adam Willis leaped to his feet.
"Now just a minute," he protested. "You guys made a deal, and Miller won fair and square. Just because you don't like it, you can't weasel out."
"It's not fair,"
added someone from Cabin 15.
"He has a point there,"
said Pierre grudgingly.
"Whose side are you on?"
snapped Chip.
"Well, you did make a deal,"
said Pierre lamely.
"If you've quite finished," said Rudy, "we can do this the democratic way. Who in this room believes in the concept of freedom and justice and wants me to serve my rightful term as camp director?"
"We do!"
Most of the campers' hands went up, accompanied by wild yelling, cheering, and stamping.
"Practically unanimous," said Rudy. "Now, as I was saying, all campers must rest and relax today. If you need something, send your counselor for it. They are, after all, here at your service. There will be numerous announcements made as the day progresses. That will be all for now."
He got a tremendous cheer.
"When I blow this whistle," said Rudy into the megaphone, "the first counselor on each team tucks the grapefruit under his chin, puts the sack on his feet, and jumps over to that line of trees and back. Then he passes the grapefruit over to the next person without using his hands. If he drops it, the whole team has to do 10 push-ups each before continuing. The first team finished gets ribbons, which they may wear all day. Head Counselor Webster will be the judge."
Rudy blew the whistle and then blew it again.
"Stop, stop. False start."
Chip was already lying on the ground, his feet tangled in the sack, a crushed grapefruit under his body.
"Team 4, 10 push-ups,"
Rudy ordered.
"Frank, go and get another grapefruit, please."
"This day won't last forever,"
said Frank warningly. He trotted off toward the kitchen.
"A treat today," announced Rudy. "Instead of having you run the old obstacle course, I've made up a new one for you."
Ralph wrung the grapefruit juice out of the front of his shirt. The counselors were a bedraggled sight. Chip, more dead than alive, had actually run into a tree. Frank's team had accumulated 50 push-ups. Jack Tyler had fallen so many times that he was dirt from head to toe. The only counselors who wore smiles were Pierre and his team. They had won the relay race and now sported bright blue first-place ribbons.
"Here's what you do," instructed Rudy. "Everybody get a partner. First, you run to where the jump ropes are and skip 10 times. Then over to the sand pit, which you slither through snake fashion. Then you somersault over to that tree and hop on one foot over to the vaulting horse, which you get over any way you can. Then you leap over the wading pool and run to the baseball diamond, where you crab walk around the bases. Then you climb through the tunnel and run over to where Head Counselor Webster is waiting to check in your time. Have you got all that?"
A loud babble of protest exploded from the counselors. "What are the partners for?" asked Jack Tyler suspiciously.
"Oh, yes," said Rudy. "Didn't I mention it? This is all to be done 3-legged with your partner."
"What?" cried Frank. "You mean tied together? Like a 3-legged race?"
"Exactly," said Rudy.
Chip nudged Frank. "Why do we have to let him push us around like this?"
"Because if we don't," said Frank, "we come off looking bad to the rest of the kids. Besides, when you come right down to it, Ralph almost dragged Miller into this deal. If you want to kill somebody, try Ralph."
"Come on, you guys," said Rudy. "There's ribbons in it for the 3 best times, and the worst 3 get 10 push-ups. Line up. First 2 pairs."
Chip and Frank lined up beside Pierre and his partner. Rudy blew the whistle. Pierre and his partner took off in a shambling gait toward the jump ropes. Chip and Frank took 2 steps and fell over.
"Stop it, you klutz!" howled Frank. "That's my leg you're ripping out."
The two began to writhe and struggle. "Get up, Chip! Get up!" cheered the boys of Cabin 13. Slowly and painstakingly, Chip and Frank managed to get themselves upright. They began to shuffle off after the first pair, gradually getting the hang of running tied together. Soon they were hopelessly entangled in the skipping ropes. Meanwhile, Pierre and his partner were already somersaulting after their crawl through the sand.
"It's amazing," reflected Rudy philosophically. "Some people are natural-born athletes."
In the distance, Chip and Frank fell over again.
"And some people aren't." "Okay," said Rudy. "Your attention, please. Because of this morning's strenuous activities, I have decided to cancel the 10-kilometer run."
"And a good thing, too,"
growled Frank, flipping his wet hair back off his forehead. He and Chip had failed to clear the wading pool.
Instead, Rudy went on, I would like everyone to gather in the woods by the creek.
What for? Muttered Chip, trying to wring the water out of his shorts.
The tug of war,
explained Rudy, as he led the march toward the woods.
All partners from the last event break up and go to opposite sides of the creek. Head Counselor Webster will, of course, be judge.
As the two teams lined up, with the rope strung across the creek, the counselors surveyed the scene distastefully. Miller had chosen the spot well. The winners were going to get ribbons, and the losers were going to get wet.
When I blow the whistle, announced Rudy, you all start pulling. Are the instructions perfectly clear?
Get on with it,
muttered Frank absently. He was staring across the creek at his opponents with a look of determination on his face. Rudy blew his whistle, and Frank's team effortlessly pulled Chip's team right off the bank and into the creek. The cheering from the campers and the winning counselors was deafening. Rudy blew his whistle for order.
Head Counselor Webster, your decision?
I think those guys won, stammered Mike, pointing at Frank and his team. From his pocket, Rudy produced a handful of blue ribbons and began to distribute them among the winners. Chip waded over and glared at Frank, who was proudly displaying his ribbon and laughing at the spectacle of half his staff floundering about in the creek. Enraged, Chip reached out, closed his big hand on Frank's ankle, and heaved. Feet first, Frank hit the water.
What did you do that for?
He spluttered. In answer, Chip placed his hand on the top of Frank's head and pushed him under water. As if on cue, all the winners jumped in and went after the losers. Chip and Frank were splashing violently at each other. In a matter of seconds, the creek was a boiling torrent of rollicking, laughing bodies. On the shore, the campers cheered themselves hoarse. Rudy blew the whistle and the brawl ceased. One by one, the counselors crawled out of the water and stood dripping and gasping on the bank.
This is Camp Algonquian Island, began Rudy sternly. Whatever that outburst was, I'm sure that it hasn't happened since the days of Elias. I expect better than this from my staff. Watch it, or you don't eat. And speaking of eating, it's time for lunch. Everyone go clean up.
As they walked back toward the compound, Mike caught up to Rudy. You know, he said nervously, tomorrow the clones are going to nail you to the wall and me to you.
In that case, replied Rudy, we'll just have to leave, won't we?
Mike's eyes widened. I heard you promise Frank that nobody goes home.
Right, said Rudy. That was for today. I never said anything about tomorrow.
Mike's heart sank.
Your attention, please, announced Rudy over the megaphone.
Everyone was just coming to the end of lunch.
This is your camp director speaking. This afternoon, all campers and counselors will take part in the first annual Elias Warden Memorial Scavenger Hunt. Head Counselor Webster is now handing out the printouts of what you are to retrieve. When you are finished, gather outside my office and have your things checked out. There are ribbons in it for the best collectors. The judge, as always, will be Head Counselor Webster.
And what will you be doing, O imperious leader? Asked Frank sarcastically, taking a scavenger sheet from Mike.
Rudy sighed.
Head Counselor Webster and myself have heaps of paperwork to be taken care of, he said wearily. We'll be in my office.
I'm going to be there, Miller, said Frank through clenched teeth. When Mr. Warden's away, that office is my responsibility.
When the camp director is away, corrected Rudy. However, the camp director is here, me. And when I'm away, my duties are taken over by the head counselor, him. He pointed to Mike.
I know what he's up to, piped up Harold Green. He just wants to get to the office phone to call his parents to come and get him.
Shut up, you twit, snapped Mike.
Green, you're on work detail tonight,
said Rudy briskly.
I don't have to listen to you, sneered Harold.
Yes, you do,
shouted Adam Willis.
Miller is camp director today, and he's the boss. Isn't that right, Chip?
Yeah, mumbled Chip unhappily.
All right, everyone, Rudy announced. Into the woods. Pair up if you like. Happy hunting.
He and Mike walked toward the camp director's cottage. Frank followed. Soon today will be over, breathed Chip to Pierre, his partner. Miller's game will finish, and mine will start. I'll have his hide for this. Pierre laughed. I don't know, Chip. I think Miller's just what this place needs. Listen to what's going on. All around them, the woods rang with shouts of laughter from campers and counselors alike. I've never seen camp spirit like this. And the kid is so funny. I knew it the minute he pulled that saleté bit. He chuckled at the mere memory. I didn't find it funny, grumbled Chip. That's because the joke was on you, said Pierre. Now come on, get into the spirit of the thing. What's the first item on the list? Chip looked, then stared. A brontosaurus rib? He read. You see? Miller's crazy. I told you. What a sense of humor, marveled Pierre. All right, let's fight fire with fire. We'll substitute a chicken bone from the dump. He slapped the bewildered Chip on the shoulder. Let's see what our friend Miller has to say to that. Chip grinned grudgingly. Get away from that phone, snapped Frank suddenly. You're not to touch it. What if it rings? Asked Rudy. Then answer it, said Frank. But I want you to promise you won't make any calls yourselves. I promise, chorused Rudy and Mike. Ah, said Rudy, looking around the office. Time to examine the records. He pulled open a filing cabinet. Get out of there, Miller, snapped Frank. Those are confidential records on all the campers. Well, we can certainly see our own, said Rudy, flipping through the folders. Here it is. Miller, Rudy. He began to read silently. It says here that I'm a homesick troublemaker who won't take part in anything. Not very flattering, but at least Chip got the last part right. Mike found his own folder and pulled out the evaluation sheet. Hey, mine's blank. Rudy produced a pen. Well, we'll soon remedy that. Before Frank could stop him, he had scrawled, Chooses friends well, on Mike's report and initialed it, R.M. Miller, you put those files back and close that drawer, shouted Frank. Come and sit down at the desk and stay out of trouble. I wonder if this is a eucalyptus tree, said Joey Peters to his partner, Adam Willis. We're supposed to bring back eucalyptus bark. It's just plain elm, replied Adam. We'll take it anyway, decided Joey, stripping some of the bark from the trunk. Miller won't know the difference. Adam laughed. The counselors underestimated Miller too, and now he's the camp director. I wish he was camp director all the time, said Joey. I've never laughed so much in my life. When Chip and Frank took off on Miller's obstacle course, I thought I'd die. This, said Pierre to Chip, is the closest thing to a moon rock you're going to find on Earth. Good, said Chip. We'll use it. I can't wait to see the look on Miller's face when we give him a taste of his own medicine with this stuff. What's next on the list? Asked Pierre. Chip made a face. Pure mineral water. Now, where are we going to find pure mineral water? Follow me, said Pierre, starting to walk purposefully toward the creek. He dipped a jar into the creek and brought it up again. Behold, water. He picked up a rock from the bank. Behold, mineral. He dropped the rock into the jar. Presto, mineral water.
It's not pure, protested Chip. Quit spoiling it or I'll get another partner, said Pierre. This scavenger hunt is supposed to be for fun. Miller doesn't believe in fun, growled Chip. Ask him. You know what your trouble is, said Pierre. You're like Mr. Warden. You don't like kids. I like kids, argued Chip, but Miller isn't a kid. Forget it, said Pierre. What's next? Chip winced. Nuclear waste. The telephone in Mr. Warden's office rang. Rudy leaned back in the swivel chair, put his feet up on the desk, and reached for the receiver, beating Frank to it by half a second.
Good afternoon, Camp Algonquian Island. R. Miller, director, speaking. How may I help you? Ah, yes, the order for volleyballs. I remember it well. 10? Oh, no, I must have left off a couple of zeros. Yes, make that 1,000. We play a lot of volleyball up here. Why, just last week...
Miller, give me that! Frank grabbed the receiver from Rudy's hand. Hello, this is Frank. Hello? Hello? His face fell. He hung up. Miller, if 1,000 volleyballs arrive here, you're dead!
This is Camp Algonquian Island, soon to be famous for its volleyball program, deadpanned Rudy. Never before, since the days of Elias, has anyone threatened the life of the camp director.
Lips twitching, Frank stared at him, and then burst into laughter. Don't let Mr. Warden hear your Elias jokes, Miller. And no more talking on the telephone. He glared at Mike. Stop that snickering, Webster. You may be head counselor, but tomorrow I'll have my job back.
No wonder Mr. Warden's always so cranky, said Rudy. You never let him have any fun.
Did you guys find anything? Asked Brian Meadows as he and his two partners came upon Adam and Joey in the woods.
Nah, said Joey. We're not doing very well. We missed the nuclear waste and the brontosaurus rib, and we faked the eucalyptus bark and the trilobite fossil.
We got the pterodactyl nest, announced Brian proudly.
So what? Said Adam. We got the man-eating plant.
He reached into his bag and pulled out a wilted dandelion. That's as authentic as our pterodactyl nest, agreed Brian, and they continued on their separate ways.
What are you getting in the kitchen?
Called Chip to Pierre, who had gone into the mess hall. Pierre came out carrying 2 ice cubes and a paper cup. The iceberg, he grinned. That's everything now. Let's go get our ribbons. With Chip carrying the carton containing their finds, they walked across the compound toward the director's cottage. A large crowd was already gathered, laughing and talking amid bags and boxes of scavenger hunt treasure. Rudy, Mike, and Frank appeared on the veranda. The campers began to cheer wildly. What are they yelling about? Asked Chip peevishly. They're cheering Miller, explained Pierre patiently. They've had a real good day. Rudy spoke into the megaphone.
It's now time for the judging of the first annual Elias Warden Memorial Scavenger Hunt. Raise your hand if you got the iceberg.
Pierre kicked Chip in the back of the leg, causing him to emit a startled yell.
Chip, what a surprise, said Rudy. Come on up. Let's see your iceberg.
Defiantly, Chip stepped up onto the veranda and held out the cup containing the rapidly dwindling ice cubes. It melted a little while we were getting it here.
Understandable, said Rudy. A very fine specimen indeed.
He presented a shocked Chip with a blue ribbon and shook his hand solemnly.
Congratulations.
Amid applause and beaming with amusement and pleasure, Chip walked back to Pierre.
Now, said Rudy, who got the eucalyptus bark?
We did,
piped Joey, running to the veranda and dragging Adam with him. Here! He held out the bark.
This is a fraud, said Rudy disapprovingly.
He sniffed at the bark.
It's obviously elm.
See, laughed Adam.
He knows everything.
Rudy handed a white third-place ribbon to Adam.
for a lesson well learned," he said.
Pierre earned a second-place red ribbon for his brontosaurus rib, as did Ralph Deacon for his plastic bag full of mud labeled nuclear waste. Joey redeemed himself by winning a first for the man-eating dandelion, and the pterodactyl nest earned a third for Brian Meadows. Jack Tyler got a first prize and the loudest cheer of the day when he submitted Leo Martin, counselor of Cabin 15, as a genuine Neanderthal man. Chip and Pierre picked up a third for the mineral water. 5 boys from Cabin 19 were awarded blue ribbons for their stalactite, which had taken them all afternoon to carve. Assorted prehistoric fossils, rare stones, and natural phenomena were all justly rewarded. By the time the awards broke up, it was supper time.
"Your attention, please. This is your camp director speaking."
There was an enormous cheer from all the campers, as well as stamping of feet and banging on plates.
"Tonight,"
Rudy went on, after the rumpus had died down,
"the counselors' tag championships will take place. We'll have to pick a number to be it first. Say 13.
At table 13, Chip shook his head resignedly, but he was smiling.
"Head Counselor Webster will, of course, be referee,"
Rudy continued.
"After that, the counselors will entertain by singing the Anvil Chorus from Il Trovatore by Giuseppe Verdi."
There was a hoot of laughter from the counselors.
"By then, Mr. Warden will be back to relieve me of my duties."
There were loud hisses, boos, and groans at this announcement.
"At that time also," Rudy added, "Frank will resume his duties as head counselor."
There were more boos, to which Frank stood up and took an elaborate bow.
"On a completely serious note,"
said Rudy, his face growing solemn,
"I feel that Elias would have been proud of all of us today."
He handed the megaphone to Mike for comment.
Yeah,
stammered Mike.
me too."
There was tremendous laughter and applause.
"Tag!"
bellowed Chip, slapping Pierre on the back.
"You're it!"
Pierre took off after Ralph Deacon, who dodged frantically and ran screaming toward the dock. The counselors had already been at it for 45 minutes, and all the campers were frolicking around with them. Everyone, except Rudy and Mike, was completely covered in dirt. The administrators, in their last hours of office, were seated on a bench at the center of the compound, watching the game.
"Look at those clones," marveled Mike. "It's hard to believe. What's going to happen if the warden walks in on this?"
Rudy shrugged indifferently.
"What are you worried about? You're not the head counselor. Frank is."
Mike laughed.
"You really put it to them today. But tomorrow—"
"And that prospect constitutes grounds for departure," said Rudy.
Their attention returned to the tag championship.
"Ha!"
shouted Frank.
"You're it!"
"I am not!"
screamed Jack Tyler.
"You didn't touch me."
"I did so."
"You did not."
"Webster," called Chip.
"You're the referee. What's the decision?"
"No tag?" gulped Mike.
"No tag?" cried Frank. "What do you mean, no tag?"
He stuck out his foot and tripped Jack, who fell over, pulling Chip down with him.
"You did that on purpose,"
stormed Jack.
"Darn right,"
grinned Frank. Chip laughed diabolically and knocked Frank down. In a matter of seconds, all the counselors had waded joyfully into the fray. The campers crowded around in a great circle, cheering. There were 2 long whistle blasts, the signal used to summon the counselors. Everyone jumped up and looked at Rudy, who pointed behind them. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, everyone turned. There, staring at them in open-mouthed disbelief, was Mr. Warden.
"This is Camp Algonquian Island,"
Mr. Warden began slowly. He ignored the roar of laughter and continued.
"It was founded 31 years ago by my grandfather, Elias Warden. Never before has the entire staff gone completely insane.
Shape up or you don't eat,
whispered Rudy to Mike. As always, Mike started the laughter. It spread like a virus through the ranks of the campers and grew until everyone, including the counselors, was slapping knees, holding sides, and laughing uproariously. Only Rudy and the camp director were in control of themselves.
Oh, well, thought Mr. Warden. After all, this is Camp Algonquian Island, where everyone is supposed to have a wonderful time. No harm done, I guess.
The beaver lay sleepless and trembling. Everything had been going along so well until today. But today, humans had been everywhere, hundreds of them. Twice he had been swamped trying to protect the dam. Fortunately, they had done little damage. But if they were constantly interrupting him, he would never finish his dam.